Hey everybody, Matt Johnston here, and we're going to talk a little bit today about sexual harassment law. It's kind of an interesting time for sexual harassment law because of the nature of remote work. A couple of weeks ago, the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, issued its stats for the year 2020, and claims of harassment and discrimination were way down. My theory is that it's when a lot of people are working remotely, it's a little bit more difficult to be in an isolated situation for harassment to take place in person. And if harassment is taking place on things like email or social media or things like that, those are much easier to document and easier to address. So I think those things are not happening when in-person meetings don't happen. Zoom meetings means that there's an awful lot of people who are privy to what is going on. So claims of harassment, discrimination, I think are down. Is this a function of people being more cognizant? Maybe. Is it a function of remote work? Maybe. Is it a combination? Probably that combination. But I do want to bring up an interesting sort of subject when it comes to harassment, particularly sexual harassment. And that is the function of retaliation. So the EEOC in Title VII and basically most of the state laws also prohibit retaliation against somebody who has reported or made a statement in an investigation regarding sexual harassment. That retaliation is probably one of the few areas in which I am generally without conscience. Look, harassment happens, discrimination happens. Sometimes it happens because people just aren't cognizant of what they're saying and sort of need to be taught a lesson. And I do believe in a certain level of redemption being available. If it's not a pervasive activity, if it's a one-off, if it's something that can be handled with a little bit of training, a little bit of sensitivity, a little bit of education, then I generally favor that. Where I don't favor things is with retaliation. Retaliating against somebody who has reported harassment, who has made a statement in a harassment investigation. These kinds of things cannot occur and should not occur under any circumstances. You see, retaliation comes from above. The only way somebody can be retaliated against is by management getting a burr under their saddle and getting a little upset about what is going on when it comes to harassment. So management is at fault. And if a manager is retaliating against somebody who has reported or engaged in an investigation, that is not something with which I deal well. And I will be honest, I have zero compunction about recommending that that manager be fired summarily, without question. You see, retaliation as an act of management is implied liability directly to the company itself. And that can get very, very, very expensive. It's also very difficult to avoid the liability. A manager is assumed to be acting on behalf of the ownership and the corporation or the business. So retaliation is not something that should be tolerated because you want to ensure that the individual employees, whoever they are, at what level they are, have the right to come forward and speak about the issues that are concerning them. And if they are being harassed or discriminated against, they need to have that right. So the other issue that I want to talk about relatedly is making sure there is a path in a small business setting. So in a small business setting, maybe 10, 12 employees, there's usually not a whole lot of layers of management between a frontline, lowest level employee and the owner. In fact, there may be none. But if the owner has made it sort of known that they're really not tolerant of these kinds of harassment or discrimination claims or things of that nature, a smaller or a lower level employee, not a smaller employee, but a lower level employee may feel afraid to bring the matter forward. You cannot have an atmosphere in which that is the case. But sometimes taking it to the manager is a little bit embarrassing, it's a little bit worrisome, or it could be the manager who's doing the harassing. In which case, you want to have a structure in which there is a third party outside the chain of command in which to make a report. Now, when I write an employee handbook for a small employer, I often include my name and email address so that people can report concerns with the owner. Yes, I represent the business and I often have to deal with the owner, but at least there's a third party who can make a claim, who can be confident that their claim is going to be heard and going to be relayed to management for action or correction. So if you're a small business employer, you need to be looking for a mechanism to make sure your employees feel safe about reporting harassment or discrimination. And you should have, if there's a manager involved and they have retaliated against an employee who's made a report, then you need to be separating that person from your business probably as quickly as you can. You do not want to have a culture in which reporting harassment and discrimination is frowned upon. In the meantime, I hope everybody is staying safe out there, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.